Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We hope you're keeping very, very safe and well. Thank you so much for joining us for our third show of the week. Big show coming your way. It is the test. Stamford Bridge, a place where, as we all know, we normally go there in trepidation. And it's awful to say, so we're actually quietly confident we could be getting something now. And that's going to get absolutely now clipped and put over everywhere on the back of Sunday, whatever's going to happen on the result. I'm delighted to be joined by three great returning guests to the Last Word on Spurs, talking us through the next hour of all things Tottenham. Been a great week as a Spurs fan. Tottenham Hotspur, top of the Premier League. I had to reiterate what I said at the start of the Southampton post-match show we did with Antonio Conte and not Nuno Espirito Santo. Although one man who was joining us last on here all remembers a night all too soon who joined me on a night of Nuno's, one of his worst results. But delighted to have three great returning guests. First up, needs no introduction from the wonderful talkSPORT. We've got the brilliant Paul Hawksbee with us. Paul, lovely to have you on Last Word on Spurs again. How you keeping?
Good to be back, Ricky. Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Yeah, it's going to have a bit more fun this time than we did after the last time I was on, I think.
Absolutely. We can remind people now, Paul, we're down the line a bit more. We've had a bit more not happy results. Spurs back in the Champions League. Paul, of course, was last on for the NS Mora review. I know you're thinking, who are NS Mora? We've all tried to forget how bad that night was. So delighted to have Paul Hawksbee joining us here, royalty from talkSPORT. Joining Paul, also delighted to have two returning guests to the Last One on Spurs. We've got YouTuber alongside us, George Achillea, back on the channel. George, how are you? Lovely to have you back on Last One on Spurs.
Hey guys, yeah, great to be back on. So I've had a lot of technical issues today. I've been moving house, so this is going to be, so apologies if anything goes wrong. But yeah, I'm just excited to talk about Spurs in a really optimistic way, which has not been usual for the last couple of years. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Absolutely, and delighted to have you back on the show, George. And joining George and Paul, a regular contributor to Last One on Spurs, always leaves us in tears. It is tears of joy, not the other side of tears. We've got the brilliant Sammy Powell on Last One on Spurs. Sammy, how lovely to have you back on Last One on Spurs. How are you?
How lovely to be back, mate. Thank you. Especially with the position we're in and how we're looking. I mean, everybody, you probably will get some comments, won't you, about Mr. Positive and being a little bit too excited about what we're seeing at Tottenham at the moment. I know that if Anthony Costa's listening, he'll have his head in his hands a few times every time I'm on, because I'm just far too positive about what I believe Tottenham can achieve. But now I feel like it's not just become plausible, it's become possible, if that makes any sense, from what we're seeing at the club. So incredibly exciting times. Great to be on, mate. And looking forward to what the season has to bring.
Absolutely. I can say, guys, already lots of love pouring in for all three of you on Last Word on Spurs. And we have to start the show, of course, with a shout out to our sponsors for this evening. That is the Beavertown Corner Pin, and that is bang opposite your South Stand. And they are the sponsors of tonight's show. We're very excited to getting back down there for some amazing screenings of all Spurs televised away games. The next game to come, of course, Chelsea. You can book your spot right now by going to their website of www.beavertownbrewery.co.uk/pages/corner pin. I understand tickets are still available to go down to the corner pin this weekend for hopefully watching Spurs up at the Bridge, securing a famous win. I think we all know Spurs' record at the Bridge isn't that kind. Hopefully, it's got to change it. One win in 21 years. We'll do the stats later. But before we do, let's dive into really a week of review for Tottenham. We have to go back to the week we had, of course, starting with you, Paul. Southampton. Spurs currently, I know this is getting far too early to say this, we're currently on top of the table at the moment. A 4-1 win against Saints, of course, on Saturday. Conte's side producing a really solid display to secure the points. Overall, Paul, looking back now nearly a week ago, what did you make of that result now?
Yeah, it was obviously a great result. And the other thing was, I think you kind of sensed in the ground that even though we went 1-0 behind, there's been times as a Tottenham fan when you're like, oh, here we go. This is it. This is the start of a terrible run. But I never felt like that at all. I just felt that it was kind of a bit of a wake-up call, but I knew we'd get going. And I don't normally feel like that as a Spurs fan. I don't always feel that confident. That's fine. We'll ride that. We'll get back into this game and we'll win it. But I suppose that's the confidence I've in the manager and the squad they've put together and the team he put out for the first game.
Yeah, absolutely. Come around to you, George. I mean, listen, Spurs getting their 2022-23 campaign off to a real flyer. Of course, we had a setback early on, Saints taking the lead really against the run of play. But I'm just sharing some of the stats that we've got on our screen that we've incorporated into the show this season. You'll see the match stats there. Spurs with a total of 18 shots on goal, 8 on target, really dominating the possession as we see there, 58%. And even when we look at that XG, for example, Spurs there, their conversion, as we see there in terms of 2.03% on the XG, down to Southampton 0.48. Overall, George, how much of a convincing win was that for Spurs on the opening day, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think after the first, like you said, the first goal going in for Southampton, even before that, I was confident because it wasn't necessarily like we started off slowly. I think, in my opinion, I thought we started off pretty well and we were attacking. Like, obviously, they just went on the other end. They managed to get, what I'd say, it was a little bit of a lucky bounce that it was just sort of unstoppable for Lloris to get because it just bounced over him and the defenders into the goal. But the players didn't get their heads down at all. They didn't let their heads go down at all. They just carried on going and just kept on attacking, which is great to see. I think there was this whole misconception that when Conte was going to come in, that we're going to play again, maybe more defensive style boring football. But I'm seeing Spurs getting the most goals in 2022. I'm seeing us constantly attacking Southampton in that game. I think we're a really exciting team to watch. And yeah, I agree. I think I was comfortable throughout the whole game that we were going to get more goals.
Absolutely. And George, I hope you forgive me for saying this. We are picking up a little bit of interference on your mic. Now, if anyone doesn't know, we started this show late. We had a little bit of interference with George on his mic in the green room. So, George, just to give you a heads up, we are getting a little bit of interference there. If you want to switch over mics or if you want to change devices, feel free to absolutely do so. Let's come over to you, Sam. We are going to just bring back the stats there, just in terms of just how dominant Spurs were for that game against Saints. Of course, they went the 1-0 goal down, but as you can see there on the screen, Spurs really dominating all of the aspects of the game against Saints. What did you make of it overall, Sam, for you in terms of performance and a reaction to when Spurs did go behind very early on?
Well, it's different, isn't it, Ricky, to what we're used to? I mean, you know, I felt different. Even when the Ward-Prowse goal went in, I felt completely different than what I used to. And you know, where you're like, I can't believe it. Spursy, it started like this again. I just felt that we're going to win it. And I'm looking at the stats, and I even like that 11 fouls committed. I like that. I like the fact that the players are giving everything. We've become a bit of a naughty side to beat. You can see why teams are a little bit hesitant on the break against us, you know, especially with Romero at the back as well, you know, doing what he does. But yeah, I thought totally that we were going to come back into that. But I was incredibly surprised at the performance Kulusevski put in. I don't think surprised is the right word. I'll take that back because I have said from the beginning, no matter how many players we sign, he will be one of the best signings, if not the best signing Tottenham have made in the last 5 years. And I'll stand by that statement. It's on my Twitter from months ago. I'm that confident about Kulusevski and the impact that he had on that game. It just brought it to life, didn't it? But it's so good to see the effort everybody was putting in. The only thing I would have liked to see, but I'm never going to question Conte in any way ever, is that I'd have liked to see the new signings come on a little earlier when we were looking comfortable, just to get to grips with the game a little bit more, you know.
Absolutely. Now, I think a lot was made, came back around to you, Paul, about how Spurs were going to set up with the game. I mean, again, we know Spurs, of course, making 6 summer signings. And just a reminder there how Spurs set up their team. Of course, you had Lloris in goal. We had, obviously, the wing-backs in Emerson Royal. We had that back three of Davis, Dyer, Romero being so dependable last season to secure Spurs Champions League football. We had a midfield pairing, of course, of Rodrigo Bentancur, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, then a front line, the trusted front three that were massively vital in securing Spurs the Champions League football in Heung-min Son, Harry Kane and Dejan Kulusevski. Paul, was you surprised that for Antonio Conte there wasn't many changes, if not at all, really, to the options he had there on the bench?
Not really, Ricky, because I think a few of the new boys had knocks. Some of them are coming back from injury. Maybe Doherty instead of Royal, although we'll come on to this. I thought Royal, certainly in the second half and as the game went on, had a good game, one of his best games for Spurs. But no, I wasn't, because I knew Bissouma had a bit of a knock. I knew Perisic isn't completely fit. I thought maybe Perisic could have started and then could have gone off. But again, Sessegnon played well. Those two sort of working together and training together seems to be paying off already. Sessegnon was really interesting to watch him. He's a guy that's clearly lacked confidence. He doesn't trust his own body. He's shown that with all those injuries. But they've been working with him, I guess, on that, giving him the confidence to sort of make the sort of runs he is.
Yeah,
and we're starting to see the player maybe we signed, the player we thought we'd signed 3 years ago. If his body can hold up to it and he can stay strong and keep working, I think we got a great player there. So no, overall, I thought he probably picked the right side, and it is going to be a squad game. And it's over the course of a season, these guys are going to get a lot of game time.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Listen, I think, again, we've seen with Conte, he's not a manager that makes a huge amount of changes. He likes to keep things really, as we use that term, steady Eddie. He likes to pick the same 11 that he can ultimately trust. And I think, again, it is a message to, the squad in general, that you've got to earn your place in the squad. Just because you're bald doesn't mean you're going to come in straight away and you are going to feature. We're going to attempt to go back over to George and see if George is good to go. George, can you hear us okay from your end?
Is that better? Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear, George. We can hear you loud and clear. We've done it. We've got going. George, I mean, essentially, look at the team there for you, this team against Saints. We had amid doubts over Yves Bissouma's fitness in general after tweaking his hamstring up against Roma. And we knew that in terms of Ivan Perisic, he was lacking really a lot of minutes in pre-season to really be given a start. I mean, definitely we've seen Sessegnon take full advantage of that. And you can see already that he's benefiting working with the likes of Ivan Perisic, you referred to this week, just saying how much he's helped him already in the space of only being at the club for around 4 to 6 weeks. Clement Longley, another one that actually missed out on the 11 as Ben Davies got the nod. Of course, with Fraser Forster, Jed Spence taking up 2 more of the spots on the substitutes bench. What did you make overall, George, of that starting lineup for you? Was you quite happy going into that game against Saints?
Yeah, I'd say I was quite happy. I think the Perisic was the only one for me that was a little bit. I was not upset, but I would have liked to have seen him start, especially since he played 70 minutes for Roma against Roma the week before. But to be honest with you, I think I think Conte is just protecting him a little bit. It would be a shame if he were to come in, maybe start straight away and then get injured straight away. So hopefully he can start in the future games coming up. But like you said, Perisic, I think Sessegnon came out and said after the game that Perisic spoke to him right before to say, make sure to get to the back post. And that's exactly what happened. He did that and he got the goal to get us back in the game. So, yeah, I think the other ones I wasn't surprised by at all. I think the fact that was the team that sort of finished the season and finished it off quite strong helped a lot. And obviously they've had a full preseason together as well. So, and look, it worked out perfectly fine. He's bringing players that maybe the likes of Emerson and Sessegnon, who in the past everyone was saying aren't good enough, are average. I think you can tell that Conte is just such a good coach now that he's elevating their game, and they managed to get a lot more goals and assists in that match. So I think overall the squad's just improved massively. And the fact that we can even bring on the likes of Perisic, Bissouma, Langley, like all these players are coming on together in the game just fills the fans, I think, with a lot more confidence.
Absolutely. Sam, come over to you. Just intrigued to ask you from your perspective, the fact of Spurs falling behind in the game, normally that would be an air of trepidation, but I can't remember the last time I watched Spurs in that amount of confidence that I always felt we were going to come back into that game. And I probably would go back to saying under peak Poch, where we were really at our game under Pochettino. I always have that belief that Spurs would find a way to win, to get back into a game. Do you find you're feeling that way at the moment under Conte, Sam, or do you still feel that you're biting your fingernails when Spurs do fall behind as to whether they will get back into games?
No, and that's exactly what I was just saying before. I knew we'd come back. I don't normally feel like that. I mean, if you're not confident that Spurs can win any game they're in, and I mean against any team in Europe, by the way, I'm not talking lightly. At the moment, the way Tottenham are, then being a Tottenham fan truly has damaged you because, which it can do. It can lead you with a false sense of security being a Tottenham fan. And at one stage, I was pretty confident that all season tickets should be provided with a defibrillator, a complimentary defibrillator. But I feel now that that it's there. And Ricky, there's a big difference between belief and believing, because when you're a fan, you want to, you think you can come back. We do watch until the 93rd minute, even when we're 2-0 down, and pray that a goal's going to go in because we're passionate. But I actually I've started to. I'm starting to believe now, and that's a lot different than the hopeful belief that I had before, if that makes any sense to you. So that's what Conte's done. And I nearly said before as well, just touching on what Paul and George were saying, is why do you need me on the show? Because everything they both said was I echo exactly what they both said. The comments were fantastic because Sessegnon and the Perisic guidance, I think that's magical. Sessegnon starting, I'm always nervous. He looked a little bit weak in some games. He looked a little bit bullied in some games. And if there's anybody that's gonna give him that little bit of oomph to get him to stick his chest out and his shoulders back and go for it, it's Perisic. And also Perisic's lack of game time. Just got commenting on that as well because George was talking about that. If anybody knows him, Conte knows him, so he knows what he's doing. So at the moment, was I surprised to see him start over Perisic? Yes, but it was the right move. Clearly, we're at the top of the league, so he knows what's going on. The gaffer, doesn't he? He knows what's happening there, when to play them at the right times. So that's a good feeling. You know, the confusion that Tottenham have caused us in the past. You're screaming at your tellies. You're throwing your laptop behind you. This is a good feeling now.
It is indeed. It really is. Paul, coming over to you. I mean, listen, there's players that in this squad and in the first 11 that they've all had in the past question marks against them. Emerson Royal being one of them. Paul, on the back of maybe his second half performance rather than first, what did you make of Emerson Royal overall at the moment? Do you feel he's deserving of his place in the team, as many of the comments seem to be iterating at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, look, he had a good second half. He got better and better as the game went on. We saw a bit of what we normally get from him, giving the ball away cheaply. I think he was a bit at fault for the goal as well. But once he got going, once he got ahead of steam, one thing I like about him, he's positive. How often he turns up in the box and gets on the end of stuff, far more than Sessegnon had until the weekend. He often does pop up. He gets headers. He's quite bold. He's still kind of learning the position, I think. And I would imagine that if you said to Conte, who's your best right wing back, he'd probably say in peak fitness and playing in his pomp like he did before he got injured against Villa, he'd probably say Doherty, I think, at the moment. But Emerson did well. As I said, he's showing willing. He's getting a handle on the position. His distribution, his crossing, he's getting. Look, it's still a bit hit and miss. His decision making sometimes is, but he put in a real shift and he got a great reception, I thought, at the end. I think he appreciated the fact that the fans could see the effort he put in. And, I mean, look, whoever we get playing, it's brilliant to have competition for places. We've had so many years when one player gets injured, the old house of cards come tumbling down. So to have potentially three players, because I think Jed Spencer's a great little player as well, to have three players in a position that I wouldn't mind any of them playing in a match, is great, and it's something we've not been used to for a very long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, one of the players that, of course, stole the headlines, George, come over to you. Listen, he's being spoken about, and rightly so, in such wonderful terms at the moment, as, of course, Dejan Kulusevski. I mean, again, when you look at players around the world at the moment in terms of his position, I mean, it's actually mad that when January, there was a point where people thought we've bought two Juve rejects, because I've got to say, for me at the moment, Bentancur is looking at one of the most underrated midfielders in the Premier League. Yes. For me, I think Spurs fans really do appreciate him, but maybe outside of Tottenham fans, they maybe just don't realise how much he has really changed the way in which we play in that midfield. I think he's really complemented Højbjerg's game. There's no doubt that Højbjerg's improved since being put next to him. But Kulusevski, I mean, listen, what I love about him is that Spurs just spent 60 million on Richarlison. Now, when does Spurs spend 60 million on a player and then leave him on the bench? I know they had no choice at the weekend because, of course, he was suspended. But, I mean, ultimately, it looks like he's just going to rise to that challenge now and say, you're not taking my spot. I mean, how remarkable is it to see the rise of Kulusevski so early into this season, the first game, and that performance, George, overall?
What a player. I love him massive. I think there was a lot of question marks from rival fans as to whether it was just a purple patch period for him, new to the league. Maybe it was just good for the second half of the season. But he's clearly shown in that game that he's here to stay and that he should be a force to be reckoned with. I feel like Southampton's game plan was probably, to nullify Kane and Son because they think they're our only threats. But Kulusevski now is just on another level to some previous players we've had in those positions. And I think he's actually complementing Kane and Son really well, because he is creating a lot of space for them. He's creating a lot of chances for them. And I think on that right side of the pitch, he's also drawing a lot of defenders away, running to the byline, taking them on, and then cutting it back to the guys in the box. And he's such an effective player, and he's necessarily the quickest in terms of raw pace. But I feel like his touch, his control, his ability is so good that he's able to skip round players really well. And him cutting in on that left foot is very, very Iron Robin-esque. Maybe Iron Robin regen.
Sorry, George. He's got that thing that Gareth Bale has at times, where you know exactly what he's going to do, but it's quite hard to stop him doing it. Yes. You know, if you know he's going to try and cut inside on his left foot, and he's going to try and curl a shot in, and you know he's going to do that, and you'll do everything you can to stop him doing it. But I think you're seeing defenders finding it difficult. You know, they try and send him down blind alleys, and it doesn't work, because if he has to go outside, he'll cut back and he'll create for somebody else. So that's what's been great about him, I think.
Has it surprised you, Paul, just the or even George? I'll come to George now, I'll go to Paul. George, has it surprised you just the maturity of him? Because he's 22 years old. He's not even been in the league for a year yet, for even a whole season. Just the way he's almost fitted in like he's been here for 4 years. It's just been remarkable, hasn't it, overall?
Yeah, weird, because obviously when he first came, when he made that first sort of sub appearance, and then I remember a lot of fans were getting on his back.
20-minute judgment. Yeah.
20-minute judgment. And it obviously wasn't the best, but what can you do when you come on 20 minutes, brand new club? Do you know what I mean? But I always said at the time, like, no, you've got to give the player a chance to adapt. And weirdly enough, it felt like all he needed was just that 20 minutes, because as soon as the next game came, he just started firing from then on and didn't stop. So yeah, the way he's adapted to the league, I mean, his physicality is his massive strength, I feel like, because he just doesn't lose the ball. He gets past players with ease, I feel like. And he's got a good drive about him. Like if you think back to the Norwich game at the end of the season, when he sort of, messed up that assist to Sonny to try and get in the golden boot, he then decided a couple of minutes later, no, forget this, I'm cutting in and hitting it top bins. Some other players might keep their head down and think, oh, what have I done? I've ruined the game. I've done this, that, and the other. But he just keeps on going, man. I can't sing like praise enough for him.
Yeah, he's remarkable. Before I actually do come to Paul, just to bring Sammy in. Sam Kulusevski. I mean, we had you singing his song the last time you was on. I know I'm actually in love with him.
That was because of because of Arthur, my 8-year-old, because he brushes his teeth in the morning singing Ginger from Sweden, which I don't know how appropriate that is. But we've also created one in the house as well, which is it's to the song Paparazzi, but I'm not going to sing it on here. But it's Kulusevski for Lady Gaga. So we dance around the house singing that. But yeah, he's underrated is a statement, isn't it? And he's one of those surprising players, like De Bruyne, where you look at him and think, "Oh, who's this Boy Scout? He must be going home to collect some Game of Thrones models or something like that." He comes up like an absolute powerhouse, and I mean seriously, he's the real deal. And he must be the best value for money since chocolate Freddos was still 10p. He's just unbelievable. I can't believe what we got him for. I mean, every credit to the scouting team. And do you know what is frightening about it is that the best is yet to come for him. I mean, have you seen him now?
Yeah.
Oh, I just can't wait to see him in 5 games time. And that comment that you said there, Ricky, bang on. I've been thinking. Richarlison coming in. I mean, we've got these badass players coming in, haven't we? In fact, they're quite frightening. I said before, we've got a bit of a naughty team, to use that expression. You've got Romero, you've got Højbjerg, you've got
Dyer as well.
Richarlison, you've got Kulusevski, you've got Dyer. I mean, you're crossing the road when they're walking towards you, aren't they, on a dark, windy night? These are badasses. And, I want that, really. I do want some... Tiara, thank you very much for that, Alpesh. I want that in the team. And I got quite excited when I watched the Amazon documentary of Mourinho saying, go out there and be beep, and I like that. I actually like that comment, but unfortunately we didn't. And I think the good thing about this now is that we're looking mean, we're looking like, and those type of players, you need them. The only one thing I don't want to do is get really carried away by your Emersons and your Højbjergs. And what I mean by that is I get really attracted to players that are passionate about the Tottenham badge, and they are. They might not be the full ticket, they might not, but they're doing well. But they play for the badge. You can see that they absolutely love the club. And I fell in love with Lamela. I get into these players that really want to give everything to the club. But yeah, Kulusevski, I think going back to that, I think we're going to see the best of him in just a few games' time. I think the whole of Europe are going to be talking about him.
Absolutely. Paul, come over to you, actually. I want to get your thoughts on Kulusevski, but also a point that actually has come up in the comments that, our average height across the team is now 6'1". I mean, we are now, Paul, a really big, imposing team. I'm sure Conte, that's a deliberate thing rather than just... that's obviously done purposely. I think as a team now, from set pieces, dare I say, Paul, even in the even when they're warming up, the players come out and they all in the tunnel. They look at those players Spurs have got now. We've got some really imposing figures now. And you look at that team we've got in there, like Sammy mentioned, the likes of Romero, Dyer, Kulusevski, Kane, Son, Bentancur, Højbjerg, even Lloris. I mean, I have to say, Paul, at the moment, Conte must be, I would think he's got to be happy with the business that has been done so far, but overall, how the players are really buying into his own methodology. Do you agree?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it is it's part of a policy. He likes big, strong, physical players, very fit players. I mean, if Longley plays, I think they're all over 6 foot. Ben Davies is just under, I think about 5'11". But sort of generally, I mean, we are a big side. We're a big, imposing side. The intensity of the way we play. I mean, Arsene Wenger said that after the game. We just couldn't live with Tottenham when they went up a gear. We just weren't in the same ballpark. We didn't have their fitness, their intensity. We kept getting the ball back. The interesting thing was that we were going to bring on 3 subs, and then the ball didn't go out for 5 minutes. I don't know if you're at the game, and it didn't go out for 5 minutes. So in the end, he brought a 4th sub on, and it was really odd to bring. It does kind of tell you, I think, during the course of the season, now you have to be careful with that, because it didn't matter, because it was 4-1, the game was over. But Saints suddenly saw a lot more of the ball. If you bring on 4 players, it's quite difficult to get the pace of the game. It doesn't matter how good a player you are in a match like that, especially one you've already won. So it was a kind of weird little dynamic. And I did feel a bit because Sonny, the great thing is, I mean, we touched on it. We won that game with Harry Kane having one of his quieter games and Sonny probably having one of his worst games for Spurs in a while. He had chances and he fluffed them. I mean, he put in a great ball for Dyer's header. But by his standards, it was a poor Sonny performance, a quiet performance. And I think Richarlison would have got on. He would have got on maybe as a first substitute and given Sonny a break, because it wasn't really happening for him. But of course, because of throwing the flare back into the crowd at Goodison, he couldn't do that. But I think he can play anywhere along the front line. But I see him. I mean, he came on in the Roma game for Sonny and went on a little run. You watched that one, George. You said he went on a little run towards the end, sort of ran out of steam, but put in a decent run, picked the ball up about 25 yards out, took players on. I mean, it's going to be great. I mean, how often have we've looked at the bench and we've had kids, we've not been able to change it. And we sit there and we think, well, what substitutions can he make? Because if he does take Kane off or someone gets injured, there's nobody to replace them. But
it's been all about the depth, hasn't it, Paul?
Yeah, exactly.
It's been all about that depth.
And 2 games a week, which is coming up, and all the madness of the World Cup, and then trying to fit games in afterwards. We're going to need all of that squad. We're going to need all those players to step up and play.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do agree. It's listen, the excitement is there for all to see. We have got the Stamford Bridge preview coming very soon. We'll see if the excitement is just as much for when that rolls around. But we will just go for our first break of the show for our listeners that are on audio. For our watching audience on YouTube, there's already nearly 700, 800 of you plus watching us live. Thank you so much. It is our 3rd show of the week. So again, thank you so much for your commitment to Last Word on Spurs. We're joined by 3 great returning guests, the Last Word on Spurs, the wonderful Paul Hawksbee from talkSPORT, the brilliant George Achillea, and the regular Sammy Powell. Great having back on Last Word on Spurs. The only man that can really rival Crackers for his analogies. And I know Crackers is watching. We've got Crackers back alongside me on Sunday. Cracks, we're looking forward to Sunday night. We're hoping we'll have a good shit quiz to hopefully go with a win at Stamford Bridge. No pressure at all. I do want to dive in, guys, to the transfer window. Just touch upon it because, listen, we've done quite a few shows on it, of course, last one on Spurs this summer. But just to get everybody's thoughts really on maybe some players that we are still trying to move on, that we haven't yet moved on. Now, we know there's still 3 weeks left of the window to go. Spurs already bringing in Ivan Perisic, Fraser Forster, Yves Bissouma, Richarlison, Clement Longley, Jed Spence. And we know Destiny Adugi is soon to follow, but he will then immediately go back out on loan, as we know, to Udinese for the rest of the season. But probably, George, starting off with you, the biggest priorities now will be trying to get the likes of Ndombele, Lo Celso, Harry Winks, Reguilon out the door. Is that a problem, George, at the moment that we haven't moved these players on? We know they're actually training away from the core first team at the moment. Do you see this being a problem, George, as we tick down towards the deadline?
I don't see it as a problem as such. I think it's just more the case of when we so publicly say that these players are just not a part of our squad at all, it then becomes really difficult to sort of demand the sort of money that we want for certain players, which is why deals probably take a long time. I feel like a lot of these players, they might go down to deadline day, where it's a case of we might have to settle for maybe just a loan, whether that be with an option or not, to buy them at the end of the season. I think they will, because it's in their best interest as well, especially with the World Cup coming up. They're going to want to play regular football no matter what, and they know for a fact they're not going to get it at Spurs. So I don't think it's a problem at all whether we're actually going to be able to cash in or not this summer, or whether it's going to have to be a loan again to some other clubs in the hopes that someone might sign them next year when maybe clubs have a bit more money.
Yeah, I must say to King Hoddle there in the comments, I know King Hoddle, a regular watcher, he tells me it's pronounced Udogi now, or Udogi. Now, I've got to say, obviously, Alice Begol, friend of the show, I know I'm going to definitely end up getting this name wrong many times. So I've been told to go with Udogi. It might be a doggy. It might be a doji. I don't know. Paul, have you got an insight on this? Anyone from your end there, Paul?
Well, I've been told it is Udogi.
Right, okay.
Which doesn't seem right, does it? I mean, I suppose it allows you to ask the question, how much is Udogi in the window?
Udogi?
Which is...
No, is it
not? Terrible gag.
That's what I've been calling him.
No, it's Udogi.
Udogi.
Apparently. But I mean, I'm sure, he'll probably come over and say, what the hell are you talking about? Who's called Udogi? But look, we don't know.
Let's be honest, Destiny sounds better anyway.
Destiny will do, yeah.
I said, we're all going to have to learn that song, that Lionel Richie song.
Lionel Richie.
You Are My Destiny. We're going to have South Stand, Shelf Side, all doing the harmonies. It's we've got to learn the song.
Absolutely. No pressure, Spurs song sheets, wherever you are, guys. Tim Winston, get on it right now. Get us a song for that. Paul, sticking with you. Just want to get your thoughts, Paul, where we are at the window at the moment for Tottenham. I mean, listen, now it seems a priority, of course, is those players trying to move them out. Thoughts on the unwanted four, Paul, for you? How much is that an issue, keeping them away from the first team as we tick towards the deadline?
Well, I mean, he's made it pretty clear, hasn't he, that they're not going to sort of play for him. And it's a difficult one because, I think clubs know we want rid of them, and they're going to wait to the very last minute to pick them up. And I agree with George. I think you'll probably see Winksy going out on loan somewhere, Bournemouth or Fulham or somewhere like that. I don't know. Maybe even Saints. That could be a move for him. I mean, he's missed so much football, and I hate to say this, but even a top-end championship side where he can just get his chops back, because he was a great player for us, and he just missed a lot of football, and he lost his rhythm, and he never quite found it again. So we have to remember there was a period, when he was playing in those Champions League games, he looked pretty comfortable in that company, and that can happen to players, for all sorts of reasons. So I hope he does find a club, and I hope it goes well, because he's been great for us. Lo Celso and Ndombele, it's a possibility. Again, people are going to wait. They're going to try and get them on the cheap, on loan. And I think you'll probably find with Ndombele, there'll be no takers, and he'll just run down his contract. And we'll probably have to pay him off at the end, because he didn't cover himself in glory when he went back to France last year. No. So why would you want to spend a lot of money on him? I think the biggest problem with him is he's got a bit of an inflated opinion of just how good a player he is. I mean, I know in patches, he can be fantastic. But I think he feels he should be playing for Real Madrid, but obviously they don't. And Lo Celso is a good player; it just didn't work for whatever reason. And I mean, there's others. There's players like Tanganga could still be going to Italy, but I think it's pretty. And Reguilon could go to Brighton. There's some talk of that, but I think they're probably going to go in the last week, possibly even the last day. I think.
Do you think, based on the fact that, Paul, at the moment Conte has got them, or got that 4 isolated away from the squad, that it isn't really causing much of a hindrance at the moment? It's more of a case that, from the purse strings perspective, because of how inflated the squad is at the moment, it will stop any potential other incomings. But we know, obviously, with Destiny, that obviously he's not going to be playing until next season anyway. So do you feel, in a way, Paul, it's stopping us from moving for any other targets? There's been rumours that Spurs are still looking for maybe potentially another centre-back or a creative-minded midfielder. What do you think, Paul?
I think those players will be moved on. They will be at other clubs, but as George said, probably on loan as opposed to selling them. I think there is money. I think if there's a player that Conte wants, if there's one more player they can bring in, I think, and as long as it's a reasonable price, I think there's a way they can get a deal done. Not worrying about those 4, because I say there is an expectation that they will be off the wage bill. So, no, I'm not too concerned about that. But I think ultimately those players know they're not in the frame to play for Tottenham anymore. They probably won't want to be in the squad. It'll all be a bit eggy. Imagine a situation like that when everybody's got this great togetherness, and you've known people like Winks who've known these guys for years and years. He probably doesn't want to be around that. Wouldn't be an easy situation. So I'm sure he's quite happy to be training alone and keep him fit. And, hoping, looking to get a decent club to move on to.
Yeah, I mean, coming out of you, obviously, Sammy, we know, obviously, Harry Winks is a player that, again, out of that 4, he'll be looking to move on, play regular first-team football. Are you surprised, Sam, by the lack of interest so far in the likes of Winks, Reguilon, Lo Celso and Domlé? Has it surprised you, or not particularly?
Yeah, no, it has actually. I mean, Winks is a funny one. He was linked with Everton a while back, wasn't he? And I was speaking to my pal who's a toffee, and I was saying, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised by Harry Winks if you get him. I think he'd be a good attribute to you. And I think what we've got to remember about these players, Ricky, is, and Paul just went, yeah, he's good. It's a shame. That's the problem, the good. And I think now it's great or nothing. And that's the mindset that the manager's got us in. You used to remove one player from Tottenham, like Bale or Dembele and Ericsson, when he went, he was almost like this invisible glue that kept everybody together and linking up. And we've always had this problem of someone leaving and it falling apart a little bit or going backwards. And there just isn't any of that anymore. And I mean, in fact, not just the transfers, but you look at Mora and Oliver Skip, and then you start going into the depth of the bench like that and going, bloody hell, this is what we've needed for a long time. And it's I'm really, really confident with whoever since Conte bought in Bentancur and Kulusevski, who, if you say that you knew they were the best signings on the planet, you're completely lying. Because we didn't, did we? We were thinking, all right, okay, let's have a look at them. Since that move from Conte, I don't care who he brings in because it's his decision. I trust
There's definitely an element of trust in him and Paratici.
I trust the team. I trust what's going on at Tottenham at the moment. Yeah. I can't believe that's coming out of my mouth, but I just do. And so they're delivering, aren't they? So if they came up with an unnamed player from Japan, I'd be saying they know what they're doing at the moment.
Yeah, no, I agree. Listen, there's a real element of trust. I mean, George, for you, listen, Pape Matar, one we haven't really seen get given sufficient minutes so far. What do you think the future holds for him, George? Would you like to see him get a loan, or do you think, based on the amount of games Spurs have got coming this season, there is an opportunity for him?
I think potentially, depending on, like you said, if there is that other player coming in, especially if it is that sort of creative attacking midfielder, because you'd like to imagine at that point, Sarr then becomes, what is that, fifth choice, which even with an injury is a little bit difficult to get into. And he's also still very young. I very much would like to see him get loaned out to, ideally a low-level Premier League team, if possible. But if not, maybe high Championship. I mean, it worked really well for Skip a couple of seasons ago. So, I think if we bring in another midfielder, then he'll go out on loan, and that's probably best for his development because I can't see him getting minutes otherwise. But if we don't, then it might be good for him to stay because Winks won't be involved. You're then left with Bentancur, Højbjerg, Bissouma, and then obviously Skippy's injured at the moment. So if you take Skippy out, if he is injured, say, or if any of them get injured, you're then only left with 3 in rotation. So I think his situation, fully depends on what other players we might bring in going forward.
Okay, yeah, that's absolutely fair. Just to answer one of the questions here from Mike, isn't the question nobody's asking is what is the current status of Brian Hill's hair? Now, when I last saw him, that hairline was in peace, and Brian is still here. Paul, do you have a view on maybe not his hairpiece, but his future at the club?
Yeah, I saw him warming up the other day. I didn't notice his hair was markedly different from when it was when he left. It's again, it's a difficult one. When I remember watching him, I went to one of the early Conference League games, and he played a bit more centrally. He got on the ball, and he was passing it about, and he looked like a number 10 because I know we signed him as a winger, and I thought he looked quite neat and tidy. But it was against a sort of minor Portuguese team in the Conference League. But he did well when he went out on loan. Unlike Ndombele, he did well when he went out. So maybe he'll benefit from it. In some ways, I'd like to see. Sorry,
I said that's what happens to all of them. They leave Tottenham and they become worldy. But
well, some do and some don't. Some do. And some don't. I mean, a good loan for him would be great. But in some ways, I'd quite like to see him stay until Christmas and see if he can get some game time.
It's interesting. I mean, and also we've got to think about, Tanganga, Paul, listen, we know we've got his homegrown quota. Of course, they've brought Jed Spence in this summer. Jason McGovern, a regular on Last Word on Spurs. Jason always says on here that, he's never really seen Tanganga ever improve apart from when he's on his debut, really. That Liverpool game, he was so good at home. I haven't really seen the player kick on. Are you particularly bothered either way, Paul, if he's a Spurs player by the end of it? To not sound that brutal, but, does it change you? What do you think the future holds for Tanganga, really?
I think if he stayed, he'd find himself in the same situation that Rodon did, that he just couldn't get games, that he'd always be on the cusp and he'd never quite get the game time he needed. And I would imagine now, the trouble is most of the loans they're talking about, they've even been talking about Papi Matar going out loan with a view to a permanent, which is interesting. He may never play for us. We may maybe just sort of turn the player over and make a profit and go and buy somebody else, or maybe having looked at him for another year at Metz, they suddenly don't fancy him. I don't know, but I think Japhet Tanganga probably needs to go out on loan. I'd like to see him come back. I'd like to see him go and have a really good season somewhere. But if it's a view to a permanent and it's someone like Milan, you could understand. We look at the players who've gone to Italy and done well, like Tomori. I could understand if he'd want to do that.
Yeah. What is ridiculous is actually we've spent more time talking about Papi Matar than we've seen him actually play. So the fact that he might leave would be absolutely incredible. That would sum up Last Word on Spurs. We spent more time banging on about the player than actually seeing him. But what we will do is, it is time. We are going to go for our final break of the show for our listeners on audio. When we come back, it is time to discuss Spurs going up to Stamford Bridge on Sunday. It is that time of the week. Taking you into this final break of the show, you're going to hear from Louis Benavente, who joined me earlier this week to give me his thoughts ahead of the game at the weekend. And alongside him, we've also got Stamford Chidge back on Last Word on Spurs, who very kindly gives us his thoughts for our listeners on audio. For our watching on YouTube, we've only got around 1,000 of you watching us live across all of our platforms. So thank you as always for all of your incredible support for Last Word on Spurs. Again, I'm joined by the wonderful Sammy Powell, the brilliant George Achillea, and the superb Paul Hawksbee from talkSPORT, who are leading us in to the Battle of the Bridge. Don't know what even round we are now. Round 4, round 5, Battle of the Bridge, since obviously we went up there under Poch. But look, it is, Paul, to start with you, Spurs' first London derby of the season. I think it's fair to say that some are still mentally trying to get over the fact that for Spurs, we played them obviously 4 times last season. And listen, losing all 4 games. And I think just 1 goal across the 4, or I think potentially no goals across the 4. It was really that poor. And Paul, first off, how do you feel going into this game? Because Stamford Bridge, in the 21 years of Spurs going there, just the 1 win. Can you ever use the word confident, Paul, going to Stamford Bridge?
Well, it's the best chance we've had for a while. I'm talking to, I do the show with Andy Jacobs. He's not feeling massively confident ahead of the weekend. It is a good time to play Chelsea. They are, in a bit of state of flux at the moment. They've just let Werner go. That's not necessarily a bad thing from a Chelsea fan's point of view. But they're bedding a couple of new players in. So it feels like a decent time to play Chelsea as much as it ever is a decent time to play Chelsea. And we should go there with a bit more confidence than usual. I don't think Conte felt he could beat them when he took over. I don't think he felt he had the players to beat them when we lost that run of games. And some of his selections in those matches were bizarre. But I just feel that we're a different team with a different personnel. They've all had a pre-season under him. They're clearly fit. They're playing with a lot of intensity, as we said earlier on. And look, I mean, they're a good side, blimey. So it's not going to be easy. And they've got some really good, experienced players. So, but I would think we should go there with a lot of confidence and go toe-to-toe with them and believe we can beat them. I think Perisic may well start that one. I think that's a game for him. Although I'm sure Conte has proven in the past he's not a man who likes to change a winning team. But in a game like that, I think the experience of someone like Perisic could be pretty important, having him on the pitch.
No, it's interesting because obviously you're looking at Chelsea across the summer. I mean, I think to be fair, George, coming around to you, it's been a chaotic summer for them. Of course, they had the takeover. They've been rejected by I don't know how many players. It's a real unusual feeling for Chelsea to be rejected by so many players with a club that normally are there, that players really do want to join. But of course, they have got the likes of Koulibaly in, they've got Cucurella in as well, Raheem Sterling. But I mean, for Spurs, overall, their record going there, we have lost our last 6 just to try and just keep the mood calm. I mean, listen, Stamford Bridge is never an easy place to go. I think a lot of the comments coming through to us here is just a case that people just want to see us go there and compete and actually go to Stamford Bridge and believe we can get a result. Because I think, like Paul just said there, George, going into last season, I don't think Conte, although he's this world-class manager, I don't think Conte ever believed in any of the games he faced Chelsea last season that he had the squad to beat them. And I will make that reference that we saw at the back end of last season. Conte said, I would love to go to Stamford Bridge now towards the end of the season where he felt he had a really settled team. So will you be going there, George, in confidence at Stamford Bridge at the weekend?
I'll be going there with a bit more confidence than I usually do. And I think we've got to remember last time we played them there, I think our back line was Sanchez, Tanganga, Davis, and maybe Sessegnon. I can't quite remember, something along those lines.
Yeah, Dyer was out. Yeah, Dyer was out.
Dyer was out. No Romero. There was a lot of issues in that team. And we had to fit Kane up front. So there's a lot has changed since then. The let's say more average or the older players have now gotten a lot better under Conte, and we brought in a lot of new signings. I think in the past we've had an issue where it's definitely a mental block going up against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, but we've got a lot more signings now that haven't got that. If you look at the likes of Basuma that we could potentially bring on during the game, he dominated Chelsea in the game last year for Brighton and looked class against them. And I think, like you said, I think Perisic, I agree, will probably start as well, just purely because of his experience going up against the bigger teams, because I don't really be able to create as many chances as we did against Southampton. So you might want that more experienced player that you can rely on. And that little cameo took on the defenders like 3 or 4 times and put in some couple good crosses in. And that's sort of what we're going to need to get around the likes of Reece James and Azpilicueta on that side. So yeah, I think I'm going there just really happy that I think our squad depth is much better than theirs. Looking at their centre mids, they've got a lot of Chelsea fans I see complaining about Kante's legs not being with him anymore. Jorginho, I haven't personally rated at all for the last couple of years. And that's what their midfield 2 has been recently. So I think Bentancur and Højbjerg and potentially Basuma later in the game can win that battle in midfield. And then it's just about getting the ball to the forwards. And I think we could do a better job than that, especially while they don't have a striker. I've noticed that despite Lukaku not having obviously a good season with Chelsea, our defense last year, with the way we lined up in our defense, we really struggled with that strong physical striker up front.
Totally agree.
Whereas now they don't have that. They've got Havertz, who's going to be playing in there, who's naturally a sort of number 10 or a winger. Now having Romero, Dyer, and Davis as a solid back 3, I think we can handle their forwards well. It's just maybe the pace of Sterling we need to keep an eye on Emerson's side. But apart from that, I think we've got the better team.
Yeah, I mean, coming around to you, Sam, I mean, it'd be good to get your thoughts on it. Listen, because we've had many shows that we've done. I'm sure you've been on. I think you was on for the last Stamford Bridge actually game, Sam. I think you're still getting therapy for it, aren't you?
Yeah, potentially. I think the majority of Spurs fans are actually. We're haunted by Stamford Bridge, aren't we? In fact, Chelsea have been bogey team for us, to say the least, as of recent years. And even when Conte went, even when we went, when Antonio Conte had joined, he had inherited. He hadn't built, had he? So he, it was like trying to build a house with no foundation, so to speak. He had to use what he got. And you knew that by his comments, because he was very open in his press releases about, look, please understand to me, fans, I will make this right if given the right tools. He was sort of leaving his Italian cryptic messages as he was, but making sure we all knew what the bloody hell he was on about, which was, these guys aren't good enough. And this, how I've inherited this, isn't good enough. So we've been to Stamford Bridge with Spurs, but we haven't been to Stamford Bridge with this Spurs, which is why I think we'll smash the caviar out of them, if I'm being honest. I'm really confident about that. They have got, they're not to be underestimated in any way whatsoever. And Sterling joining, no matter how much grief he gets, is such a huge attribute to
I totally agree.
Absolutely. His turn, his speed. He's obviously going to get that chance to play in a much more forward position. And it's a threat, but I can't see anything but a Tottenham win. So I'm really looking forward to the match. Again, positivity for you, Ricky. I think we will smash the posh out of them. So we're going there for nothing but a win, are we? And I think it's about time for a little bit of redemption at Stamford Bridge, and it's coming our way.
Well, it's mad, isn't it? One win in 21 years. Spurs' record away at the top six in general just isn't great at all. Paul, listen, there'll be a lot of key individual battles at the weekend, but just really keen to get your thoughts on how Spurs may line up. So maybe looking at the fullbacks. We've got Matt Doherty, Emerson Royal on the right side. We've then got Ivan Perisic, Ryan Sessegnon battling on the left. Who do you think Paul Conte will go with? Will he change it, or do you think he will stick with the trusted fullbacks that done the job against Saints? How do you feel it'll go?
Well, off the back of a 4-1 and the way he's managed the team so far, my gut feeling is he won't change it. And if he does change it, it will probably just be Perisic. Bissouma, to throw him into a game like that when he's not really played, we've talked about trust already, and he trusts those players. I think he'll want to go to Stamford Bridge, where he does want to get a result from a pride point of view, because that would have hurt him going back to an old club and getting cuffed like that last year. So, as I said, maybe Perisic, because of his experience and what he could bring on the field. I don't see any more changes to the starting 11 than that. Thankfully, we're going to get Galini back in on loan and have him on goal, hopefully.
Hopefully not. That guy, the greatest pose of a goal going past him, didn't he? He was absolutely superb. It was just
terrible.
Unbelievable. But listen, he did bring
these as well, just very quickly. I think the good news is with the 5 subs is that he can start with the exact same team and play Sessegnon. And if he does seem to be out of his depth in that game, he can make that quick sub to Perisic, because he knows that he's still got 4 more in the bank for later.
And what a beautiful position that is, George. Can you even believe we're saying it? It was one option, and if he goes out, what's going to happen if Kyle Walker gets injured, or what's going to happen if there's an injury in a certain position? And this is what I'm sorry to cut in there, Joe, but this is what just excites me so much about Tottenham at the moment. Is what reiterating what I said before about one player leaving and the house of cards, falling down, and that's theoretically what it was like. It's so good having those options.
It's true, Sammy and George. If you looked at the subs we had on the, it would be White, Divine, Scarlett, good young players, but they're not going to come on at Stamford Bridge and make a material difference to the team.
Chance.
But Richarlison is, Perisic is, Bissouma is. So that George is right. 5 subs now. The depth of our squad is going to be key.
Spence out of this equation. I will again stand by my words as I did with Kulusevski. He's going to rock it under Conte. The pace of him. If he's that fast now, Conte could the way that he drills his players, he's going to get him. He's going to get him into a completely different level.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because again, like you all said there, the options that we've got on the bench this time around, we saw with Conte last season. It's nothing against the academy lads that were there. He just never trusted them. It's to bring those players into high-stake Premier League games when Spurs are trying to secure a top 4 finish was always going to be tricky. But now you do feel like he hasn't got the one-hand time behind his back. He isn't handicapped. He's got a squad there that really now he can count on. When he looks at that bench now, he's got options. He's got depth in the squad, which is a joy to really see. George, just in terms of the midfield for Tottenham, there's options again there with the fact of Basuma. Does he something for Bentancur? It does seem like Højbjerg is his trusted lieutenant. I think if you look at the minutes that Højbjerg's clocked up, I think he's played as many, if not more, than Harry Kane in the last couple of seasons. So it does feel like Højbjerg will be probably definitely in that starting lineup. Do you think it will be Bentancur, or can you see Basuma getting his debut away at the Bridge?
No, I think it's got to be Bentancur Højbjerg starting off, because I think they did so well in the last game, and it's been our pairing for the last six months now. I think it's the dynamic they bring is sort of what Conte wants, because as much as I personally would be the situation where we've got Bentancur Basuma as our middle two, because I feel like that's a very silky midfield pairing. I think Højbjerg just sort of offers a little bit more maybe on the defensive side of things, and sort of breaks up play a bit, and then just allows Bentancur to sort of carry the ball forward. So I think Bentancur and Basuma are a little bit similar in that respect. But I think it's great, because there's a case where, like he has done or seems to be doing, he can sub off Bentancur for Basuma. We can even bring on Basuma and go for a middle three if it's a case of where we need to see out a game. I know he did that maybe once or twice last year, where he maybe had to bring on Winks and sort of create a little bit more of a defensive middle three. I can definitely see that happening. If we're 1-0 up, maybe 15 minutes to go and we really need to see out a game, I think Basuma can come in and we can sort of block out the midfield and really stop Chelsea trying to work their way through. So there's a lot of options with it, and it's really exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they can offer.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, let's come around to you. I mean, listen, Chelsea, they began their season with a 1-0 win up at Goodison Park. I'm going to be honest and say that I didn't see the game, but from the Super Cup highlights I saw, it was more of a grounded out win rather than a very thoroughly convincing victory from my view on the game. And listen, I think for Tuchel, he's really relying upon that solid back line, which again has seen them enforce it with Koulibaly. Of course, they lost Rudiger in the summer. What kind of Chelsea team do you think we'll see at the weekend, Sam? Because it is a team that is in transition. I mean, in the only pre-season, Tuchel commented on the fact of their lack of commitment. I mean, would it be a real Chelsea together team, despite the fact of just how much of a chaotic summer it's been? Are we catching them at the right time for you?
Yeah, you've got to be careful, I think, Rick, because they're a little bit bipolar, aren't they? They've got the potential of going out there and doing the business, but they just seem to be undecided about what's actually going on in the squad. I do, however, think Tuchel is a good manager, and I think he knows how to set up for certain games, but he's still just trying to find the right system at the moment with people who he's introduced. So he's a dark horse, Thomas Tuchel. There's just something about him, that I don't like. He's a little bit like the geezer off Star Wars who wears the hood going over, and I don't know. There's something dark about him. And it scares me, the Chelsea game always. But I think we'll set up really well against them. And I'm going to go against you by saying same squad. I think he's going to start Perisic. And I think he'll do that for a reason of experience and pure, I can't say the word on here, but pure, he's a bit of a shithouse, isn't he? He's rough, basically. That was the polite one, by the way, so terribly sorry for anybody listening.
Just out of interest, Sam, do you not, just so to play devil's advocate there, do you think the game is too big for Sessegnon then, in your opinion? Or...
Yeah, I still do, actually. And I think he's improving, and I'm so happy about that. And I'm so energized by his how he's changed. But let's remember what we were saying at the start of the show. He's changed massively as soon as Perisic has got into his ear. And I don't think Spurs fans, or even myself, quite understand just what Perisic is going to bring to the squad as a senior player, especially in the dressing room. Apparently he's a right leader, and he really gets involved in people's personal problems and influences. And clearly that's what he's done with Ryan Sessegnon. I think personally Conte will have picked up on that straight away. And I think he'll probably start him at Stamford Bridge to make sure that we've got the tough boys out there giving the experience against them. It's a game we've got to win. And let's be honest with you, Perisic, he knows how to win, mate. So that's what we want. So I wouldn't mind seeing him in the starting lineup. Apart from that, no other changes for me. Højbjerg, like I say, I've got a mix. I'm always mixed with him. He gives 110%, but doesn't necessarily get 110% in his results. But I just love the fight in the Viking inside of him. He's just, so positive. But at the moment, I just can't take it away from him. He deserves the game time that he's getting, Højbjerg. And a great link up with Bentancur too, which Bentancur, as George was just saying, he's got to start. And I think until you watch back games, maybe multiple times, or view the highlights, I don't think you understand exactly what he brings to the table, because Bentancur isn't just creativity. He's at the back. And a lot of his creativity comes from the back. He gets back, he helps the team out, and he plays it out. So he's got to be there too for me at Stamford Bridge starting.
Interesting. Paul, coming around to you. I mean, listen, Chelsea, they've still had a busy summer despite obviously the failure in getting some players over the line. Of course, they've had the likes, of course, as I've said, Koulibaly come in, Raheem Sterling. I mean, 2 players there. You look at obviously Cucurella as well. Paul, we've discussed in terms of confidence going into the game. How do you think Chelsea will approach it from their perspective? I mean, at this stage, for them, it's their biggest game of the season. It's at home, it's Tottenham. Is it must win for Chelsea? Or do you think both teams at this stage maybe, I speak for me, I mean, I would take a point purely because it's Stamford Bridge. Although I have got confidence going into the game, I don't think we're going to get beat, which is a really weird thing for me to say going to Stamford Bridge. I have this air of confidence. Do you feel that as well, Paul?
Yeah, I don't think a draw would be a disaster this early in the season. I think they're going to target Royal. I think they're going to target the right wing-back position, because Cucurella only had, if he starts and he's had a week, you saw him put in a great ball last week, nearly set up a goal in that game. He's only on for a few minutes. He's a great player. I mean, when Brighton beat us last year, him and Basuma were fantastic. The best 2 players on the pitch, really. So I'm glad we got one of them at least.
Out, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. So Cucurella's excellent. And I think that thing that we've seen Raheem do hundreds of times, just arriving at the far post, just sort of a little grubber over the line where he gets there. He gets in front of the defender. So we're really going to have to be on it down the right, because their left is going to be the biggest threat, I think. And if they're going to score goals, it's going to be balls across the box to Sterling, or, Cucurella taking players on, committing players. So Royal's going to be at it. As I said, I think he probably will play him again, because Doherty, I don't think he's completely 100% fit yet. I could be wrong, but that whole right side of our defence has really got to be at it for the game, I think.
You know what's interesting about Emerson Royal? I think one of the things that I will say, I hope I'm not putting the knockers on it here, but maybe I should be saying this before I strip the Stamford Bridge, that I haven't felt defensively he's ever really been a problem. I think it's just the hesitancy of getting over the halfway line, which for me has been his biggest problem.
He can switch off a bit. He can now and again. I mean, he's strong in the tackle, but positionally sometimes he gets into some odd positions, and he can let himself down. He has done that once or twice. He can put a stray pass in bad areas, which we don't want to do against good players. But look, I don't want to have a downer on him, because I think he played very well. But we saw in the first 10, 15 minutes that he has occasionally got a bit of a rick in him. And that's what we can't. We don't want to get a bad start. We don't want to get their crowd up, their team up. We're going there with confidence. If we cock up at the back and they get an early goal, we're behind the 8 ball again, which is a great shame. So they've got to be at it from the off. That's all.
I mean, how much, Paul, like say, actually, Jules said it a minute ago, the fact that they haven't got Lukaku, they're a real forward that does really hold up play. And as much as they criticised him last season for his lack of goals, he does give you that option of being able to bring other players into play. But the fact that Havertz is a false 9, should we maybe take some confidence from that, Paul, that there isn't somebody really leading that line? Obviously, they've sold Timo Werner, obviously, in the last week as well. We should be taking confidence in the fact, Paul, that we've got a team there that really, if we're at it from minute 1, we've got a genuine opportunity, haven't we, really?
I think, as I said, the way we've started, our fitness, the fact we're a more settled side than they are, because they didn't really know what was going on over the summer. I don't know. I think we should go in with every confidence, but just be aware of the fact that they're good. They're a good side. We're good players. And we just have to keep our concentration as much as everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. That is going to be the key. I think, like I say, one of those things about Chelsea where I said earlier in the show that, Tuchel questioned their commitment. Well, I think the one thing we do know about Chelsea is that he'll be telling the players and the fans will know this is Chelsea's biggest game of their season. It always is. Tottenham at home, they're going to be up for it. And Stamford Bridge generally, whenever I've been there for away games, normally, it's probably one of the only times that they do really raise the roof at home for Spurs at home. It's a Sunday, it's a 4:30 game. There will be a real crowd expectant of seeing a performance. Let's kick off predictions. I'm going to go first because I feel like mine's a bit more of a negative on it. I'm going to say a 1-1. And I personally would still take that. I know people might be thinking, I'm being pessimistic there. But I just think our record at Chelsea over 21 years to only win there once. I think a draw, for me in a way, if Spurs win, I think the hysteria of the media then takes control of us to say Spurs are in a title race. And I think so early on, 2 games in, can our players handle that? I know we've got Conte, but it's so early on. I would take a point and keep going under the radar. George, let's come to you. What do you think the result will be up at Stamford Bridge at the weekend?
I think we could do it, but it's not going to be easy. I think 2-1 for sure. We have definitely improved defensively. We still seem to concede 1 goal a game, but no more than that. But it's going to be a tight game. Regardless, because I think once we do get a lead or we get a couple of goals, maybe there might not be as much confidence to continue going to get more goals like there was against Southampton, because we just know for a fact if we commit too many players forward, they've got a lot of quick players and technically gifted players in the likes of Mount, Sterling, even Havertz as well if he's creating for the wingers. I think we just have to be a bit wary of that as to not to commit too many players forward. But yeah, I think a nice 2-1 lead and 2-1 win would be nice.
Interesting. We're getting a lot of positive predictions come through, and also some realistic ones saying people will definitely take a point now and snap your arm off for it. Sam, let's come to you. What are you going to go for up at the Bridge Sunday afternoon?
Yeah, I'm confident this time round, and it's funny because they are our bogey team, so it's the same as when we go to Manchester City. But it's
can I just say, Sam, before you say it, can I say Anthony Costa, look away now?
Oh, listen, if you're listening to this on the podcast in the morning and you're driving on your way to work, put it on mute now because you're probably going to drive into a lamppost. But but seriously, I said it about Arsenal, and everyone, God, the grief I got on Twitter from that. God, stop cursing us. You curse the team. I said, we'll thump Arsenal. We'll thump them. 2 or 3's going in. 3-0. Not saying that I'm always right, but what I will say is it's 1-1, Ricky, with Rudiger in the squad for me. It's 1-1 or a potential loss with Rudiger in the squad. That's how big an impact I believe that player has had on Chelsea.
It's massive.
I must say, big fan of Rudiger as a football player. And if you're not, then you're possibly not a football fan. But without him, 2-3-1, I think we're completely going in to take over. I think every single player are giving 110%. I'm glad we're playing them now and not at the end of the season for tired leg reasons, because every single player that's on there will get forward, will get back, will give every single thing they've got. And I can see a 3-1 coming for Tottenham. I do want to be in the title race, Ricky, by the way, just on another comment for what you were saying there, because we've liked it, haven't we, for the last few years, going under the radar and seeing if we can slip in. And it's been a funny feeling at Tottenham. We've spoken about it quite a few times about, no one's talking about Tottenham. It's great. Let's just see if we can get the wins. Everyone's talking about Tottenham, Ricky. Everyone. That's what's happening right now. And so they should be, because if we're not going to make it work now with what I would say is our best roll of the dice in Antonio Conte that I think Tottenham are going to have in many, many, many years, then they're never going to talk about us. It's Tottenham's time now to take the reins and put everything in that Antonio Conte can give them, because they'll never work harder than under anybody like him. So we're going to Stamford Bridge. We're going to smash the hell out of them, and we'll go for 2-3-1 up the Spurs.
Well, Mike's loving it. Mike's loving it. You've got him confident. Paul, coming over to you. I feel like I saved Paul to last because I'm intrigued to see what comes out from Paul's perspective. Paul, what do you think going into this one? I don't think I've ever had you on Last Word on Spurs confidently predict a result at Chelsea or away at Chelsea or away at the top 6. What are you going for, Paul?
Well, I agree with the guys. I'm not quite as optimistic as Sammy, but I'd love it to be 3-1. But I'm going to go. I think it will be 2-1. And just to add to that, I think Richarlison's going to get the winner.
Oh,
I think he'll come off the bench.
gets big goals, doesn't he, Richarlison? Does get big goals.
And I think his scoring record's not bad against Chelsea. Everton, he's got the old curse of Everton coming back.
Yeah,
Chelsea, they've had a tough time with. I just think the depth of our bench will be the difference. I think when we look back on the game Sunday night, we'll say we had those players. We could make changes at key moments, and we were better able to do that than Chelsea. So I'm going to go 2-1, Richarlison to get the winner.
There you go. I tell you what, well, we are back with you Sunday evening for post-match reaction. We've had a wonderful panel join us tonight. I've had over 1,000+ of you watching us live. Thank you so much for all your support. When have you ever seen a more positive Spurs panel going into Stamford Bridge? There must be something crazy, or is it just Antonio Conte taking over? Sammy,
so there's more of it.
I hope so. Cool. Sammy, lovely to be back on Last Word on Spurs. Sam, where can everyone check out your instant reaction for all Spurs things? Sam, tell us where they can find you.
Well, I've been relatively quiet, mate, with all this rushing to the hospital and baby activity going on. So just for listeners out there, I've got a little one on the way, so he's going to be here soon. So been quite quiet on Twitter, but you get me at Samuel Powell. And I'll give a little shout out to gardenstoredirect.com as well if you need any garden store furniture.
Love it. Fantastic. Sam, always a pleasure having you on Last Word on Spurs. One of the most positive Spurs fans I know. He's honestly love Sammy, loving the analogies. Crackers, we've got some rivalry in there. Bring it back on Sunday. We need you back for the win, hopefully. Fingers crossed. George, love you back on Last Word on Spurs. Where can everybody check out the wonderful content you provide to the Spurs community?
Yeah, I love being back. Love being on the show. And it's just, as you can see on the tag, that if you're watching on the screen, it's at George Achillea on everything, or George Achillea on YouTube. We'll be going home and away every game, especially now that the channel will be, documenting my journeys and what it's like to see it from a fan's perspective. So yeah, just make sure to check out on YouTube and any other social media that you can find.
Oh, man. Listen, we are going to try and get George back on, of course, for some post-match reaction this season. As of Spurs' fixtures, we are going to work around it. It is tough. I said that to George actually off air on messages that because of the nature of Spurs' times, it is tricky. We will find a way. We've seen lots more of George Achillea, of course, Sammy, and hopefully of Paul Hawksbee as well on Last Word on Spurs. Paul, lovely to be back on. It's definitely an uplift, Paul, from NS Moore, isn't it, this one?
It is. And if you get a chance on Monday, if Tottenham win the game, listen to the show from 1 o'clock on talkSPORT, because first 15 minutes tends to be a look back. And as we're playing each other, so you'll have Andy massively pissed off. And then to make it better at 1:30, Danny Kelly's joining us. So Danny's booked in.
Brilliant.
So you'll have two Tottenham fans and Andy. So obviously that's if Tottenham win. Could be a bit uncomfortable if we don't. But yeah, let's be confident and say that first hour could be fun if you're a Tottenham fan on Monday on talkSPORT.
Oh,
Brilliant.
man, like I say, make sure we catch Paul on talkSPORT. Paul, anything else you want to give up? Anything else come up in the diary, Paul, for you? Anything else worth mentioning?
No, just sort of keeping busy, getting to the games, enjoying the games. Love being back at the weekend, seeing a lot of faces I hadn't seen really all over the summer. And yeah, I think we all felt that, just getting back to the stadium and seeing our mates and watching some football. It felt like a really nice day, lovely weather, nice optimistic feeling in the stadium. It was great to be back.
Absolutely. I must make you laugh. Obviously, we was in lockdown with Mourinho in charge. We all pleaded for the football to come back. It came back. We wanted it taken off again for our mental health. Now it is back with Conte. The excitement, honestly, is so brilliant at the moment. But guys, listen, an absolute pleasure. The wonderful Sammy Powell, the brilliant George Achillea, the superb Paul Hawksbee. Guys, thank you so much for all your support for Last Word on Spurs. From the guys here, from me, we are back with you on Sunday night. As always, keep safe, keep well, and come on, you Spurs.